All right, as you know, today we begin the JavaScript portion of the class, and I just want to talk about a couple things. It'll probably take about 5 minutes, hopefully, or so, and then we'll get right into Chapter 1. This is what I sent you, or had you copy over yesterday, and I just wanted to show you very quickly, if you're interested. I go out and watch a lot of stuff on YouTube. Some of it's good, some of it's not that good. This is a demo that this guy named Derek Banis, I don't know how the guy does it. He puts free videos out there for just about everything, and most of them are really good. So I don't know how he's, if somebody's fronting him or what, or if he just has that much of a desire. Maybe he's a rich guy. I don't know. But he's got a bootstrap tutorial, and in the first part he does this stuff. So he goes through a lot of stuff that's in a site. And I know that some of you on your evaluations put down that you either didn't like bootstrap or you didn't like when it was taught or how it was taught or whatever. And I do appreciate all that, I do. And I'm going to talk with Evan at the end of the semester. And one thing I'm going to tell him is I think that it should go to the end of the semester and just be something that's brought up in the last week or maybe 2 weeks. And for the assignment, I think it'd be better off to actually create a very simple site as a class. That's what I'm going to tell him. I don't know if he's going to agree or not, to be honest with you. All right. Now, a couple people put down in there, I should be asking you more questions, and that's fine. But that's got to be a two-way street. So if I ask more questions, ideally at least, people are going to be answering. But I have absolutely no problem with that. And the other main thing that I got from people was sometimes either on an assignment or on a day in class, you're not exactly sure what the objective is. So I'll try to be better about that. The objective for today is literally to be introduced to JavaScript. You have been a little bit, and also to go through Chapter 1 of our book. All right. But I wanted to show you this. No, that's not the one I want to show you. But if I go out to YouTube right here and I type in, this is the guy's name, Derek Banis. And you'll notice, well, it says 7,850 results. I don't think there's that many. But he's got a Java tutorial. He's got a Python tutorial, an HTML5 tutorial. He's got 11 JavaScript tutorials. All right? And Angular, C++, C#, basically everything you either are going to learn in here or some of the stuff we've gone over already. And they're good. He always starts everyone the same way, which I think is a little hokey. He goes, "Hello, Internet." I don't get it, but all right. So if you're interested, and I just want to show you this, if you run through his first video, which is about an hour long, all right, maybe it's a little over an hour. But if I type in my name here, all right, guess it's number 15. I'm just telling you so I don't have to keep playing the game. But this is all the stuff that he goes over. So he puts everything, and most of this stuff is like they're little separate segments, but he goes through that stuff, all right? And everyone's different in here. Some of you are going to pick this up right away. Some of you are going to like this a lot more than you did the HTML class. Some of you, it'll be just the opposite. There's two important things to have you realize here. Number one, all right, this is the first time we're actually programming, and the other 3 courses that you take in the program are programming courses. All right, I want all of you to stay in this class. I don't want anybody to drop out or anything, but I do want you're going to have to take a serious look at yourself. If it's the end of the semester and you go, geez, I really frigging hate programming, because you're going to get 3 more semesters of it. I just want to make sure people realize that. And the other thing is there are good things and bad things about JavaScript. I may have given you this analogy before, I don't know. But to me, JavaScript is a lot like playing an electric guitar, because if you don't play that well, you can turn the amp up. All right? What you're going to go through next semester when we go through the C#, it's like playing a folk guitar. If you play a folk guitar and you miss a note or something, most people, unless you're hooked up to an amp, most people are going to know. All right, so JavaScript is, you're going to see this today already, is what's called a loosely typed language. There are data types, but you don't have to specify them. So in that way, it's sloppy, for lack of better words. So the question has always been, well, that's fine. If it's sloppy, why are you teaching it to us? Because it's the number one client-side scripting language that's out there. Plus, if you decide you want to learn jQuery or Node.js or Angular or anything, they're all offshoots of JavaScript. All right, so you have to learn JavaScript first. All right, as far as the other stuff that's in there, the student data files, they're in there. All right? So all of that stuff should be in there, hopefully, for everything that you're going to need. Now, I want to mention a couple more things, and we're going to start. This first thing here, this is a guy that I subscribe to him. You don't have to, but he's an interesting guy. And he puts stuff, I get stuff from him almost every day. He writes a blog, and then he'll send it to you. And some of it's really good. He has podcasts and stuff, you know, how you can do this, how you can do that. Some of them I listen to, some of them, they're okay. All right? This guy is really interesting, John Sonmez. He's actually doing something I had not heard of before. He is writing a book. It's his second book, and I have no idea how big the book's going to be. You can have the book for free if you sign up for his blog. You get it because he puts it in there as parts of his blog. So you have to print it out yourself, but you get the book for free. All right? And then he's going to sell the book too. And he said a lot of people have already asked him, they've said, you know, why are you doing this? You're going to lose so much money. And he just basically, in one of his tapes, he kind of laughed and he said, it's not about the money. Okay? So this is his site. If you're interested in it, it's called simpleprogrammer.com. All right? And he put this out. Anybody want to take a wild guess? What's the number one language to learn in 2017? It's not JavaScript. It's Java that you learn in the fourth semester. That is still the number one most requested language nationally. All right? This, just so you know it, and I'll leave that up there for a second, you might want to go out there right now just to developer.mozilla.org. That basically is everything JavaScript that you'd probably ever need. All right? So if you're confused on how to do this or how to do that, that's a really good site to go out to. All right? You don't even need all that stuff. Just developer.mozilla.org is enough. Then there's a Bootstrap tutorial that I already mentioned to you. All right? This John Sonmez has got a couple courses out there on Pluralsight. I don't think they're free. All right? But I just wanted you to show you that. He's got a thing in here on how do I learn C#, how do I learn Java, how do I learn this, how do I learn that. I already mentioned Udemy to you. Udemy is starting to partner with another company that's called Skillwise. And what they're starting to do, and I bought a couple of these, is they'll have like basically $1,000 worth of classes that you can get at about 98% off. So you can buy it at like 30 or 40 bucks, but it's like they bundle together 5 or 6 classes. All right, if you're interested in that. The other thing, and I wanted to show you this, at this summer when I met with Evan for the first time, I said, well, what do? You know, you get a student, you give them an assignment, and maybe it's pretty hard, and they get about half of it done. It's 11 o'clock, and they're just, you can tell looking at them, it's Friday, they're spent. They don't want to do anything else. And they're not supposed to leave. All right? So he suggested that you go out to codeschool.com or Code Academy. But on here, you notice they've got HTML, they've got CSS. What's going to happen is if you work your way through these, some are free and some are not. So you can go to a certain point on these things, and then it'll say to continue on, you have to get a login. To get a login, you have to pay. All right? And they're not usually cheap. This is probably 25 or 30 bucks a month. All right? And that could be a hardship for some people. I can appreciate that. But I'm just trying to show you that there's other resources too in here. All right, so that's that one. Sure. Again, this some more Bootstrap stuff I found. So if you want some more, what I'm thinking of doing, I'm asking you this, but we'll see how it goes. If we have a week at the end of the semester, I don't know if we will or not, but if we do, I might spend a couple days where we quickly create a Bootstrap site as a class from scratch so you can see what's going on. All right? But the other one that I wanted to mention too to you, there are so many of these sites out there, and again, some of them are really good, some of them not so good. But there's one out there that's called the New Boston. I think if you just go out to the newboston.com.
What is going on, guys? My name is...
They've got stuff on just about everything too. So if I go out to playlists, you know, they got plenty of them. And I think that one of the ones that's out here is one for JavaScript, but they just got a lot of videos, and they're very good. All right. And then lastly, before we start up, that's Derek Banis's stuff. So that's, if you're interested in that, that's all 11 of the URLs on YouTube for his stuff. And finally, this is the thing that Brady got for me, that hunlock.com that's archived. There's some stuff in here. You might want to take a look at these if you're struggling in the class. All right. I mean, let's face it. I don't want you to do what I'm about to tell you. But let's say I give you an assignment, and you're supposed to create a JavaScript program that does X, whatever X is. For probably any program that's out there, you can go out on the web and find it. All right? But when you get to a job and they give you an assignment, it's not going to be out there on the web. All right? You're going to have to sit there and do it yourself. All right? So here's some sites that are really good. I'm not going to go through any of them, but just so you know. All right. So with that said, I want to start in the textbook. Close a couple of these things. All right. So we're in at the beginning. Hopefully you have your book with you. If you do, feel free to open it up. If you don't, or you don't want to, whatever. But chapter 1 is probably among the longest chapters in the book. Some of the stuff we're just going to blast through because it's HTML. So we're not going to spend much time on it. All right? Some of the other stuff we will spend more time on. So, it's nice the way this breaks out. I think I showed you this before. We are going to go through the first 8 chapters of the book. There's just not going to be enough time to go through the last 4. And you might say, well, those are probably the most important. Typically they are. Excuse me. Typically they are. But you've got to go through the fundamental stuff first before you can go through that stuff. All right? So today is going to be the intro to JavaScript. Chapter 2, working with functions, data types, and operators. Chapter 3, arrays and control flow. Chapter 4, debugging and error handling. Chapter 5 is the DOM. Chapter 6 is on forms. Chapter 7 is on object-oriented JavaScript. And Chapter 8 is on strings and arrays. What we won't go through here will be chapters 9 through 12, and you can see all that stuff here. All right? Now, then he goes through the table of contents in much more depth and breadth of coverage. I'm not going to do that. If you're interested, he gives an, and I don't like to do this in books. It's tough enough to get through a book anyway. But the preface, the only thing I want to mention about that is you're going to see this in chapter 1. And I think it's one of the questions on your test too. I think that one of the first things on the test review is what is JavaScript? That's pretty much what it is right there. It's a client-side scripting language that allows web page authors to develop interactive web pages and sites. Now, what that says is not totally true, because today you can run JavaScript on the other side, on the server side. But mainly, JavaScript is used as a client-side language, and if you don't know what that means, you will by the end of the period. And it's designed to make websites interactive. Does that make sense? All right. One of the other things that I kind of heard from people is, I'm kind of getting a lot out of when we do stuff as a class. All right? So that said, 2 things. Number 1, I'm going to ask you, and I'm going to ask you this on Monday. I'm going to ask you to look during the weekend and look at there's like 4 or 5 do-it-yourself projects at the end of each chapter. we're going to do one as a class. I'm going to let you pick that one that we do. So you're going to be responsible for the other 4, but we'll do the one as a class. All right? So look through the ones at the end of Chapter 1 this weekend, and I'll ask on Monday, and it'll have to be a vote. Of course, I'm the king, so I guess if there's a tie, I pick. All right? But I don't really have a preference one way or the other. All right. There was something else, but hopefully it'll come to me. All right. But it goes through an overview of the book. It tells you what's the most important stuff in here. All right. So I'm just going to start into Chapter 1, which I believe starts on page 1. So every chapter that's in this book has a title, of course, and it has a set of objectives. I don't feel it's I don't feel the need to sit and read each one of those objectives to you. All right? This is not only an introduction to JavaScript, but they also talk about the World Wide Web. And there are some questions. You're probably not going to like the tests as much in here. They'll probably take you a little longer to go through. I've been cutting them down, believe me, because they all have 50 questions on them. And I've already cut them down. Your first 2 have 33 each. All right? And some of them are duplicate questions. So if you have it once in the question, you're going to have it later on in the question. Or once in the test, it'll be later on in the test. All right. So they talk about the World Wide Web. I'm taking for granted, and I might be wrong, that if I give you 1 to 2 minutes on the World Wide Web, that's enough because you've already had it. All right. Again, when the World Wide Web first came to prominence, it was actually set up originally as a way to hook and link together educational institutions. It really was. That was what it was all about. All right. Turn that off. Okay. And then Tim Berners-Lee was kind of the known as the father of the World Wide Web. He's the person who came up and said, I think we can link together documents. And that was where the idea of hyperlinks actually started. All right. The web itself is somewhere around 35 years old. All right. It was around 1980 or so that it really started. So again, they go through this, they talk about what it is, etc. This, I think, is interesting. Notice this paragraph right here, which looks like it's on page 3. A common misconception is that the words web and internet are synonymous. They're not. The web is part of the internet. All right, but there's other things, all right, like email, etc., and there's other things, all right, that make up the entire internet. One of the things that you're asked on the test is what's a URL? A URL is a uniform resource locator, all right? And what is it? It's a web address. It's something that you type into an address bar or you click a hyperlink for and you go out to a website. And again, I'm just taking for granted that makes sense to everybody, okay? And a URL is part of what's called a URI. I don't think that's on the test, all right? Now, it used to be when, and I think there'll be a picture similar to this, but I just wanted to draw this for you, not to show you my artistic ability, because there isn't any, but it used to be that I'd come into class and I'd do things like this. So I draw 4 small squares on a board, and then 1 bigger square, and I have links to all those. And each one of these small squares, those are clients, all right? And typically we think of them as just being a browser, but it's a machine. So if you're at home, let's just, in fact, even if we were right here, I'm not asking you to do this, but if I asked everybody in this room to go to rankin.edu right now, that would be all of you. You'd be typing into your address bar, rankin.edu, hitting enter, and it would be sending something to the Rankin website. All right. So the website, you are sending out what's called HTTP or Hypertext Transfer Protocol requests. All right. They get responded to by the server at Rankin that sends back HTTP responses to each one of you. So when you talk about a client server, the client is your browser, and the server is some kind of a web server. Now you can actually load software onto your computer where you can use your computer as both a client and a server. So you can develop server-side applications on your own machine and test on your own machine. The problem is no one else can see it because the server's on your own machine. When we started putting stuff out to IWT.rankin.edu, that is a server. That's why other people can look at it. And hopefully that makes sense to you. Because you do have to understand what a client is. You do have to understand what a server is. And that's what they talk about in here. All right? They go through the browser wars and the fact that at the beginning, that basically Netscape was it. It had about 90% of the market, and when IE came in, they had about 10%. It quickly went to the other way around, and I don't think we have to say any more about that. All right? We've talked about the W3C, the World Wide Web Consortium, before, and the fact that they're the governing body for basically all things web. Now next, they talk about how to create a web page, what HTML is. I really don't think we have to talk about that. All right? So they talk about HTML syntax and the fact that it's tag-based. And here are some of the basic tags that you'd use. You should all be familiar with this. This is page 6 in the book. And you should even know, this isn't on the test, but you should realize that article and nav, those are HTML5 tags, and the other ones have been around basically forever. So they go through, and on page 8, they show you a typical HTML document right here. All right? And they say if you key all that stuff in, that's what you're going to get. The thing is, with what we've been doing so far in this class, the only thing we could do on there, on the picture that you see on your screen, is we can add things like required and different types of things that you have for HTML5, but there's no real interactivity. And if you click, if there's not a submit button that shows here, but if there is one and you click it, nothing happens. That's what we're going to change now. All right? Now the good news is for virtually everything that you have in the book, except for the exercises at the end of the chapter, everything else, all the HTML, those are on those files I gave you. You're going to be typing in JavaScript and not much else. So you're not going to have to go out and create the HTML and the CSS. That's going to all be created for you. Because this book is designed to just be concentrating on JavaScript. All right? So again, they give you some HTML5 history, and they have you do this, and they talk to you about what's in here, etc. Like I said, I believe you've got this file already in there. It won't do anything right now. It won't be interactive because you haven't put the JavaScript in. But you are asked to go through and do some of the exercises that are throughout the chapter. All right? So I'm going to jump all the way up to page 15 here, where they have an introduction to web development. All right? We've talked a little bit about this before, but you also should have an idea by now what the difference is between a web designer and a web developer. A web designer might actually be someone with very little computer training, but they might have some marketing training or graphic design type of training. All right, where they can sit there and they're real good with color, and maybe they know enough CSS and enough HTML, but they can't add any interactivity to their web page. That's what a web developer does. They may do the design and the development, but a web developer is going to add the interactivity to a web page. And again, that's what this part of the class is about, is adding the interactivity. So they go through, starting on the bottom of page 16, talking about this client server. Kind of, again, their picture isn't the same as mine at all. All right? But this is one of the things that's in here. When they talk about a two-tier system, that's what I showed you on the board. And that's also what's in your book on page 17. That's this. And what I mean is, there is one server that's serving all client requests. Now, when you think about it, very possibly, if you had a powerful enough server, one server could maybe satisfy Rankin. I don't know. My guess is they have a server farm and they have several servers. But when you think of a place, and I always bring them up as an example, like Amazon, There's no way one server could serve everybody. It just wouldn't happen. So you get server farms, where you get a bunch of servers that are all over the, probably with Amazon, all over the world. The other thing that's nice about that is that when you've got a server farm and maybe you've got 100 servers in a location, if one goes down, you still have 98 or 99 that are up, type of an idea. Whereas if you're have a small website and whoever owns that, the hardware and whatever, it goes down, you're kind of hosed. Okay. But the idea with a two-tier system is just many clients but one server. All right. Now, that server has to do everything because there's only one of them. When you have a multi-tier server, and this is shown on page 18 in the book, you've got more than one server. So you might have, for example, it says processing and data storage. That's not that important. Look at it this way. This is probably a database server. So any database requests come into the main server, they get funneled off to the database server that handles it, sends it back to the main server that sends it back to the client. Does that make sense? And it used to be, when you showed a client, it was like this. But client today is anything. Client's a desktop, it's a laptop, it's a tablet, it's a watch, it's a phone, all right? But with a multi-tier, there's more than one server involved. That's the big thing to remember about that. So we're up to page 19, and this is the first time they're bringing JavaScript into the equation here, all right? And as it says, when HTML was first developed, web pages were static. In other words, they were designed not to change. And I may or may not have mentioned this to you before. Maybe you've even seen this. If you ever go out to I'm sure they have them here at Rankin someplace, probably over in the other building. You ever go to a place and get a trifold type of thing where you open it up and basically it's got all the information about a company on it? It's in thirds. What a lot of companies ended up doing when they started to get a web presence is they basically just mimicked that trifold thing. And each one of those pages might have been a web page, but it didn't do anything. So I could go out to the site today, I could go out to the site tomorrow, I could go out to the site next week, and it never looked any different. All right? Well, the problem with that is if you're going to do that, people aren't going to want to go out to the site very often because it's not changing. People want interactivity. All right? That's what JavaScript does. And you saw this already. But again, this is about halfway down on page 19. JavaScript is a client-side scripting language that allows web page authors to develop interactive web pages and sites. It's exactly what we said in the preface of the book. All right? And that's almost word for word what the author puts on the test. So, kind of an important note in here, all right? Kind of an important note is they mentioned this note on the middle of the page here on page 19. HTML, CSS, and JavaScript each have their own place, okay? In other words, okay, CSS is designed to pretty up a page. You've seen this before, right? We've taken a web page that had no CSS, added CSS to it, and made it look real nice, all right? One of the things I'm thinking of, because I found this is something I built with students a couple of years ago. And we can do this if you're interested as a class. We built this. All right, it's not beautiful or anything. And actually, I grabbed this from a template that was out there. And, but we're validating a form. And we're validating it, and we show the difference between validating it with JavaScript and validating it with JavaScript and with HTML5. But you know as well as I do that for any of these pages right here, if I come up to one of these pages, so I'll go up to the index page here, and notice I have two lines in here. I've got the reset line and I've got the style line. And you know this by now, that if I take this out, now just that one page, all right, you saw exactly what it looked like right here. And there it is with nothing on it, all right? And you all know by now, one of the reasons, we talked about, we want our .html files to hold only HTML. our .css files only CSS. Well, the reason I'm telling you that is what we're going to move to now is we want our Java files to be in .js files. From now on, when you're given a test or an assignment and you've got HTML and you've got CSS and you've got JavaScript, I want you to have a CSS folder and I want you to have a JS folder. And your .js file should be in your JS folder. Your .css file should be in your CSS folder. Does that make sense? All right. And then JavaScript again. It says you use it to add functionality. I use the word interactivity. All right. It says here it's a scripting language. It is a full-fledged programming language. It's more powerful than a lot of other programming languages. It's not as powerful as some other programming languages. All right? And again, some of the things you'll like about it are the fact that if you forget to do something, typically JavaScript does it for you. It guesses what you want and it does it. And the good thing is, more than 99 times out of 100, it's correct in the guess that it makes. And that's a good thing. JavaScript is also an interpreted language. It's not compiled, which means that anytime when you're running it that you have an error, you have to fix that error before you can go on. All right? We're going to talk, we'll have a whole chapter later on debugging. All right. So they give you here, I'm not going to read this, but if you look up here on the bulletized list that's up on your screen, these are some of the things that you can do with JavaScript. There's more to it than that, but it's some of the things that you can do. Hopefully you remember, I went through this over 2 days, so we did it quickly, but we looked quickly at some of those payroll examples. That's the kind of stuff that you're going to write. The first several chapters, we're not, even though we'll have HTML, even though we'll have CSS, it's not that important. But then in later chapters, we'll see how you meld together the JavaScript with the CSS with the HTML. All right? They actually make things look a lot nicer. But some of the stuff we create at the beginning, will be, for lack of better words, will be pretty ugly because it won't be very styled. Now, they talk here about security environments. It says the most common environment where JavaScript is run is on a web browser. There's certain things that you're not allowed to do using JavaScript. All right? You're not allowed to use JavaScript and have it go out to other people's websites or, other people's accounts and look at information that they have in there. You can't typically print off information from a hard drive. All right, that kind of thing. Because there are security things that have been put in here for this. Now, this is as opposed to what they show on the bottom of page 21, server-side languages. And they mentioned some of them were popular, PHP, ASP.NET, which we go over next fall. That is a server-side language. All right. Python is really becoming very popular. Some people love Python. Some people hate Python. I had a student from, one of Charles' students came in and was talking to me. I don't remember when it was a month or so ago. And he asked if we had Python in the program. And I said, not right now, but it may happen at some other time. I don't know. I said, why? He said, I taught myself. I really like it. I think it's really easy and it's a great first language to learn. All right. Well, if our advisory committee comes up and says, you know what, you really shouldn't be teaching JavaScript as your first language, you should be teaching Python, then it'll change. But until that happens, it won't change. I will tell you that Python drives some people nuts. It's all based on, you have to use your tab key, and you have to tab stuff over and make it and put it in certain columns. And some people just hate that. All right? But with server-side scripting languages, they're typically more powerful because they allow you to do things on the server side. All right, they try to show you this pictorially here on page 22. I'm not going to read this to you. So the question is on the bottom of the page here, should you use a client-side or server-side scripting? The answer is usually both. All right, and one thing is, it's possible for users to turn off client-side scripting. Did you hear that? It's really important that you know that. All right, I can go in here, and I don't remember where it is, but it's someplace in here, up in here, one of these things with the tools, there's a thing in every type of browser. It's different depending on the browser type you're using. So it's different in IE versus Chrome versus Firefox. But there's a way that you can go in and you can turn it off. It's probably down here someplace under settings. All right, but there's something in here somewhere where I can go and I can literally turn off JavaScript. That's why even if you write the best JavaScript code, period, if a person has got JavaScript disabled on their browser, they skip it anyway. All right. As it says, as a general rule of thumb, you allow the client, I'm going to even go further than what they say here. As a general rule of thumb, you allow the client to do everything the client can do. Because the more work you can do on the client means the less work that the server has to do. All right? But if I create a really complex form, we talked about this in week 1 or 2. If I write a really complex form, and as soon as you hit the button to submit it, if it goes right to the server and you screwed it up, now it's got to go all the way over to the server for the server to look at it, say you screwed it up, and send it back to you. So what you typically do is on the client side, you check it first to make sure it all looks okay. You validate it there. Then you send it over to the server. And guess what? When you send it to the server, you run the same tests you just ran on the client. Because why? Because again, the server can disable client-side JavaScript. So you typically run all the same tests all over again. Yes?
So is that like the CSS validator, I guess? But
No.
JavaScript?
No, what I'm talking about is, let's say that you've got something where you ask a user to type in the date, their birth date. Okay. Now there's a lot of picker tools that you can use today where they can just pick it out. But let's say that it's an older form and you're asking them to key in, their month/day/year. Then JavaScript validation would check to make sure the month is between 1 and 12. That the year is maybe between 100 years from the current year, but it can't be later than the current year, type of thing. And that the day is 31 or 30, or if it's February 28 or 29. That's the kind of validation that we're talking about. There's no real JavaScript validator per se. There's a package that's called, I think it's JSLint, and you can run your stuff through there. But the problem with you, and it's a real good package. It finds stuff for you. That's the good news. And I can see if we can bring it up here. It says the JavaScript code quality tool. So as it says, you paste your JavaScript in there. All right. So I can go back and I can find some JavaScript. Let's see if I can find something that I'll just grab this, okay? And I'll paste it in there. The problem with this is if I paste it in and I type in JSLint, if you don't tab the way the author tabs, he flags it as being an error. He wants everything to be done in a certain way, and I don't like putting my for loops with the curly brace right there, so you can see that. All right. Now you can go through that and say, wow, well, that's whatever, but it's not a bad tool, but it's not a great tool. If you are using brackets, we talked a little bit about this before. They have that beautify thing in there under edit. That'll line stuff up for you. So if you're real anal about stuff being lined up, or you want to wait and let the system line it up for you, you can do that. All right. So what's a web application? A program that's executed on a server but accessed through a web page loaded in the browser. All right. Adding JavaScript. There's 2 ways that you can add JavaScript to a web page. They're similar. If you remember, I'm not asking you this. I could. It would be an open-ended question, so maybe I should. In fact, does anybody remember what are the 2 different ways that you can add CSS to a web page? All right, inline with the style tags, or external with a .css file. And guess what? There's 2 ways that you can add JavaScript to a web page. External with a .js file, or internal. But instead of using style tags, you use script tags. All right? So you can use script tags and you can put them in the header, in the head section or the body section. Most people put most of their JavaScript in the body section. And the reason for that is, especially when we start talking about the DOM, which won't be for a while yet, but when we talk about the DOM or the document object model, if you put this script stuff up in the head section, it's possible that it could try to be doing things to your web page before the web page has been loaded into memory. So nothing will happen. But if you put it in the body section, you'll be fine. Is there a way around that? Yeah. You could put it like in the onload section, and there's other things. And we'll talk about all this stuff as we go on. All right. So they show you here a way that you can do this. So if I added this, in fact, I'm going to do this right now. I'm going to grab, let me copy this, copy. All right, I'm going to make a really, really, really simple web page. So no, it won't be very politically correct or whatever. Okay. So doc type HTML, head. I won't even put a title in. Head, body, and I'm going to paste that. Oh, not that. Okay. How about this? Just document dot write hello world. And my body tag and my HTML. Now you can see it. Look at that junk that I put up there before. All right. So I take that now, save it as index.html. So I'll just save it right out to the desktop as index.html. Okay, no, we'll call it index2.html. All right, now when I run this, well, screwed something up. That's because it shouldn't look like that. Oh, I didn't put it in script tags. All right, so now when I do this, you say, well, it didn't do much. No, it used JavaScript to write on the web page. That's the key thing. So that's what document.write is. Document is, it's your document. It's the document object. It's your web page. All right. The other things that we're going to start going over in here, just so you see these, is we're going to say something like this. Alert, please have a nice day. All right, so I run this again. There's the alert. Please have a nice day. Click OK. There's the hello world. All right. So alert is kind of like you're creating what's called an input dialog box. All right. It's sort of like a pop-up. Yeah, but you have to. It's modal. You have to answer it. And the other one, and you've seen this in a couple of the examples we did, where I can say something like age equal parse int prompt how old are you? And we'll put in here 20. All right. Well, I screwed something. Oh, I know what it is. I'm missing a paren there. Always do that. So there's have a nice day. There's the dialogue. So really, for what you should really be getting out of Chapter 1 is just a feel on how to do this. But the fact that you use document.write to write on the web page, alert for an input dialog, and prompt, well, actually, alert is for more an output, and alert is for an input. Try to say it again. Okay? Document.write writes on the web page. Okay? An alert basically provides an output dialogue or a message dialogue or whatever you want to call it. A prompt provides an input dialogue. All right? You're going to be working with all of these as we go on in here. Oh, come on. That's not good. All right, let's go through about another page, then we're going to take a break. So if you want more, if you turn up to page 27, they have a whole big thing in there on the right method. So if you didn't like the description that I just gave you, you can take a look. There's the right method. And they talk about document.write. And the last thing, and then we are taking a break, I'm turning up all the way to page 30 here. This is a key thing for you to realize. All right? JavaScript is a case-sensitive language. So if I'm got something in my program, so I say here var age equal 21. Okay, that creates a new variable called age. If later on in my program I do this and I call it age with a capital A, this is one of those places where JavaScript's sloppy. It creates a brand new variable called age with a capital A, and it has no value to it. You understand that? Now, what they don't mention in the book is when you write functions, they're not case sensitive. So that document.write, you could put it all in caps and it would still work. Don't do that. No one does. All of your functions and methods that we'll talk about later, make them all lowercase. All right? Especially your variables, make them all lowercase. And we're going to talk more about that as we go on. So we're on page 30. That's a good start. It's 8:56. Let's come back at 9:10, please.